Tennessee could get a number 1 seed because Joe Lunardi has them as a number 1 seed right now after the win against Kentucky.
LSU.
Kentucky, that's when he moved them up. He moved them up after Kentucky.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay,
I thought it was after LSU. Okay, but sorry, right, I got it mixed up.
Anyway, I read earlier in the week that I thought it was him. There are a lot of these basketball guys now. It used to just be Joe Lunardi, and Jerry Palm and his 5 sisters. But so you have Wood receiving a first number 1 seed in school history be an accomplishment. Man, I'm scared to ask this question, Caleb, because when you ask this question, I feel like I should say, yes, it would be a great accomplishment. But here's the issue, Caleb. If I say that, it almost seems to de-emphasize what happens in the tournament. So a number 1 seed and to get bounced in the second round is still not making the Final Four. So I don't know if this is a big accomplishment or not, and I'm scared to say it is, to be real honest with you. How about you on the message board? Is it a big accomplishment? Caleb, what do you think?
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to pose this question, because a lot of Tennessee basketball is clearing some hurdles that they haven't cleared in the past. You know, winning an SEC regular season title. They did that in 2008 with Bruce Pearl. They finally broke their conference tournament title drought when they won it in 2022 with Rick Barnes? They broke their SEC tournament title drought when they won it that year. They have a Final Four drought, but they've also never received a number 1 seed. So the reason we talk about why they need to make a Final Four run is because they haven't done that yet. So then I thought about it and I'm like, okay, what if they don't make a Final Four run, but is a number 1 seed an accomplishment on its own? Like the actual label of a number 1 seed, or, you know, the way you hang an SEC tournament banner, an SEC regular season title banner, or anything like that. Is a number 1 seed in that category, or is a number 1 seed just no? All that matters is what you do with the number 1 seed.
Gosh, I think to me, this is like having the fastest car in a NASCAR race. I mean, the fastest car means that you should probably win. Now, there have been for the NASCAR fans out there, can I use this example? Dale Earnhardt Jr. Now, you don't know this because you're not a big NASCAR fan, but Dale Earnhardt Jr. and DEI Racing, either because of their dad or because they cheated on the restrictor plates, which allows how much gas you have in there, they were always the fastest car. So there was no excuse for him or Michael Waltrip, who's won 2 Daytona 500s, and he's one of the worst race car drivers in the history of man. You should have won, or you should have been right up there at the end. But the tournament's a little bit different. But I want to say it means you should be in the Final Four, right? That's what I want to say.
Okay, so with NASCAR, because you do the I know you do the timed racing ahead of time to see who gets to get to the front of the line when the race starts, right? Yes. That's how that works, right?
Yes.
Is it an accomplishment if you get to start at the front of the line in NASCAR, or does it matter if you don't do anything after the end of the race? Do you consider it like if you talk about somebody's accomplishment, do you say they sat at the top of the pole for a race? Does anybody ever put that in at all?
You know what's funny is I judge the practice speeds more as the fastest car. So the fastest car sometimes was a big deal, but the practice speeds as well, how you run with other cars. So this would be that, wouldn't it? This isn't the eye test where you just look at a group of teams and say you're the best one, so you get a 1 seed. This is what you've done while running with other teams, right?
Yeah, this is kind of like having a preseason number 1 ranking. Like, you celebrate it, but you don't hang a banner if you had a preseason number 1 ranking, right? You don't sit there and like hang a banner if you said my team was number 1 for a few weeks of the season. Like, so it's not an accomplishment. It matters what you do. So I wanted to have that segue into, because we wanted to talk about this earlier in the week, Dave. How does this team? I've got the 3 greatest Tennessee basketball teams of all time. 2018, 2019, when Tennessee went 30-5 and spent 3 weeks at number 1 under Rick Barnes, lost to Purdue in the Sweet 16. Excuse me, they went 31-6. Excuse me. 2009, 2010, the only team to ever get out of the Sweet 16 to go to the Elite 8. And in 2007, 2008, with Bruce Pearl, they were number 1 for a week. They were 31-5 and won the SEC regular season title. Those were the only 3 teams that are in contention for the greatest Tennessee basketball team of all time. You can't name the Ernie and Bernie show. Ernie and Bernie never had fewer than 7 losses in a season, and they never got out of the first round of the NCAA tournament.
Okay,
So,
the first round was, though, the round of 32, in all fairness, and I think you have to consider them because of what they did in the NBA, one of the better teams, not one of the most successful teams. How about that? I don't want to semantic you to death, but, I mean,
yeah, but
those
it's
were
like
great. But, I mean, like, I think
like you're
that
ranking the 98 team as a better team than the 97 team, even though the 97 team had more talent in football.
well, for instance, I think the team that lost to North Carolina in Austin is the best Tennessee basketball team that I've ever seen personally. I mean,
Yeah, they're
that's
not on this list.
okay. I mean, but there's an overlap, right? Year before, year after.
No, there's nobody. There's nobody from the green years that are on this list. It is
Wow.
Bruce Pearl 07 because accomplishments matter. 230-win teams,
Oh
07,
no, no,
08,
I agree.
2018.
If you're doing it completely accomplishments, I'm with you. Go ahead.
Okay. So I broke down kind of how they're similar and different. And Dave, I kind of want to go through them. And you mind just giving me your takes on how they're different for each one and how
Yes,
they
go.
compare?
Shoot.
All right. So let's go to 2007, 2008. Here's where this year's Vols are better. They have a go-to scorer in Dalton Connect. That team did it because Chris Lofton was limited because of his illness, and Tyler Smith could only score under the basket.
Well, let's face it, Lofton did not have the overall skill set in scoring that Dalton Connect did. As a matter of fact, I've said that nobody but Bernard King did. All right. What else?
They're also better because they have good point guard play in Zakai Ziegler. Do you remember how bad the point guard play was on that 07-08 team? It's the one thing that held him back. They had Ramar Smith running the point when he's clearly was a combo guard.
Yes, and I remember, not that you mentioned them, I remember Tony Harris was not a natural point guard and was probably more of a 2, but he was too short to be a successful 2. So same argument, different team. You didn't bring him up, but go ahead.
Yeah. Kind of like when the Sixers tried to run Allen Iverson at point guard because he was so small, but he was never a natural point guard.
Right.
All right. So here's where the 2023-24 Vols are worse. And you're going to see a theme here, guys. Depth. Bruce Pearl ran 9 guys in 2007, 2008. Barnes ran 7.5. Now I want to get to 2009, 2010 real quick. 2009, 2010, these Vols are actually better at shooting in general. They're a better 3-point shooting team, and they are a better free throw shooting team by about 10 percentage points at free throw. The other thing they're better in, Dave, and you ready to laugh at this one? This Tennessee basketball team is much better at gun control than the 2009, 2010 Tennessee basketball team.
So if Tyler Smith doesn't have the gun, then that's a better basketball team as a whole. Is that what you're telling me?
If Tyler Smith doesn't have the gun, they're going to the Final Four and playing for the national title that year.
You might well be right. There's a certain coach of Jewish descent that would have agreed with you. That's for sure.
Yes.
That's why
Yeah.
that's why the fight was so strong to keep him on the team. And it was closer than you might think. Portions of the program brought to you by Andy Mason, AndyMasonRealEstate.com. How about, 40 years combined experience in Tennessee? Can't beat that. Best prices, best service in the biz. So let me ask you, and the column's on offthehooksports.com right now. Let me ask you, rank, if you can, the top 5 Tennessee basketball teams of all time, because you worked on that, and I've been waiting to kind of pick your brain a little bit. So honestly, I haven't read the column yet. I will after we discuss it, but I wanted to get your thoughts. So how would you rank them?
I would go, I think 2007, 2008 is number 1 because I go by accomplishments, and they won the SEC regular season title and 31-5 with that.
And for those that maybe are new or younger, give me a couple of names.
Players?
Yeah. Give me a couple of players. Robert says your cast makes my employees have to work harder during the show because I'm out there building cabinets with them. I'm not out there building. Oh, Robert, I'm sorry. But if you would like some promotion for your cabinet business, I can work with that. Go ahead.
All right. So the number 1 is 2007, 2008 because of the Chris Lofton, Juwan Smith, Tyler Smith. And I mean, those guys, they were just so good. If they have a point guard, they're winning the national title. They were number 1, first team ever to get number 1. They won the SEC regular season title. So I go with that at number 1. Number 2 is 2009, 2010, the Elite 8 team. And the only thing they were missing was they weren't great at shooting. And then they were great at one type of shooting, but not another. But they weren't great at that. And also but their length was incredible. I mean, Wayne Chisholm and Brian Williams, 6'9" and 6'10", Scotty Hobson and JP Prince, 6'7", Bobby Mays, 6'2". That team had length out the wazoo, and they were super deep. They went 11 deep after Tyler Smith was dismissed. Number 3 is 2018-2019. The Grant Williams team. They were 31-6. And the issue with that team is the exact same issue with this team. Barnes only went 6 deep that year. That's why they were number 1 with 1 loss, and then they lost 3 games in February. They lost 1 in March in the SEC tournament, and then they lost in the Sweet 16 to Purdue. So number 3 is 2018-2019. By the way, heads up, I'm not including this team yet because the season's not over. I'm not putting this team in my top 5 yet. I got to see how the season plays out. Number 4 is a team you brought up. That 26-7 team that went to the Sweet 16 with where Ron Slay wasn't a starter, and Ron Slay could have been the best player in the SEC at that time.
Yes.
And that team was loaded. So I got that 26-7 team number 4. I will put the final Ernie and Bernie team at number 5 at 21-7. They did win the SEC regular season title that year, even though they flamed out in the tournament. So they went 21-7. It was 78, that Premier's team. Now, and for the record, there's some other close ones. Dale Ellis was on a team that went to the Sweet 16 and on another one that won the conference tournament. They're right there at 6-7. And then there's a bunch of teams from the 40s, but come on, you can't have all white basketball teams as one of your top 5 teams of all time.
Oh, now that doesn't really matter. I mean, you don't mean that, do you? I mean, how am I a Celtics fan if that's not the case?
Well, the Celtics had Cedric Maxwell and Robert Parrish and a few of those guys. So, wasn't like that. It's just their superstar was white. Their best player was white. Who, by the way, I'm an analytics guy. Larry Bird was significantly better than Magic Johnson. Magic Johnson's not a top 5 player of all time, and I'm just going to say that out loud.
Okay. Right.
He never should have. He won 3 MVPs that all should have gone to Michael Jordan.
Well, let's put it this way. He was a top 5 player when I was your age. Nowadays, everybody's got bumped down the list a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and put that.
He wasn't the best player on his team.
Okay.
Kareem was better.
Not at that age.